ARRAKIS. Dune. A planet that is both a volatile desert wasteland and the most precious jewel in the universe. For it is only on ARRAKIS where the spice melange can be found. The spice has shaped humanity for a millennia, and it is the foundation that makes interstellar travel possible. Fortunes rise and fall as quickly as the sands shift on ARRAKIS. It is a place where a smile and a quiet word can cut as easily as a crysknife. And nothing is what it seems. Welcome to Dune.
All right. Okay, welcome guys to Weave the Tale. We're here tonight with a special event. We're doing a Dune Roundtable with, a couple of our cast members from the show Dune Blades of the Hidden that we just wrapped last Tuesday, as well as our dear friends from Modifius and the wonderful Rob Mulligan. So yeah, if we can, I guess let's start by going around, give a brief intro of who you are, your involvement with the 2D20 Dune tabletop game. And then, yeah, we'll get into the discussion from there. So let's start with Jace.
Hello, I'm Jace Ridley. You can find me at Jace Ridley pretty much everywhere, and I played Mentat Xavier Vaughn in Dune Blades of the Hidden, which, as Jen said, we wrapped up last week.
All right, let's go to Allie.
Hello, everybody. I am Alexandra Pitchford, and I played Lady Cassandra Lucinor, the heir of House Lucinor, and at the time, anyway, sister of the Bene Gesserit. Although these days her loyalties are far more clearly defined.
Let's go to Rob.
Hey, I'm Rob Mulligan. I'm the founder of Cybernation Uncensored. We do all kinds of live gameplay and tutorials, all kinds of stuff. We're on Twitch and YouTube. We also just launched a Kickstarter. And we partnered up with Modifius to play some Fallout 2D20, some Dune 2D20. Dune, we're getting ready to just start up here in December. Pretty excited. We have an all-female cast, like I mentioned earlier off camera. Might be an all Bene Gesserit team. I don't know exactly what we're doing with it yet, but it should be pretty unique, so I'm excited to get that going.
Fantastic. Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy Peregrine. I'm the lead writer on Dune, and so consequently I rarely, if ever, get to play it. So I do freelance bits and pieces for Modifius and lots of other gaming companies, so I did a little bit on Star Trek as well. But
Amazing. I loved, I just got out of a Star Trek actual play not too long ago. That game was also super fun. Moving on to the lovely Rachel, who also,
Hi.
again, we need to draw attention to the voice of our fantastic trailer. Thank you again for everything you've done. And yeah, let's get in your intro.
Hi, I'm Rachel J. Wilkinson, and you can find me some version of either Rachel J. Wilkinson or Ray J. Wilkinson everywhere. But I was a contributing writer to Dune, and Andrew is kind of my boss. Is that right? Kind of my boss. So yeah, and happy to be here with you guys.
We're so happy to have you. Yeah, and then hi, I'm Jen. I am SavageSparrow on the internet. I was the storyteller for the Dune Blades of the Hidden game that just wrapped, and I do a bunch of things. Generally, am a out and about in the nerd circles as a artist and Twitch streamer. I want to say again, we would like to thank Modiphius so much for sponsoring our fantastic show. It was so much fun playing and running your game. As Weave is currently between seasons right now, I believe. I don't know who is sponsoring next season, but I'm sure our tech can pop that into the stream chat so you can support all of our sponsors because they are great people. To get started with the roundtable, I think it'd be really cool to just sort of talk about like what was your first introduction to Dune? Because at this point, I think what's really incredible about the series is that there is so much content out there related to it. So many different, like there's 13 books. There's the Lynch movie, the miniseries, obviously the new film that came out, the upcoming series. Like there are so many different vectors to get into this show, and it's always cool the different ways in which people were drawn to the series. Whoever wants to start it off, go ahead.
Well, I can go ahead and start it off because I have sort of a funny story. My dad, in his bookshelf, had all of the Dune books, but we're talking the actual 1960s, 1970s version of the books. And as a little kid, they had these interesting covers. Believe it was God Emperor that had the sandworm, and the face on it. And I was so fascinated by the cover of this book, and I kept going to grab it to read it, and my dad would slap my hand and said, "You're not old enough. You're not old enough. You gotta wait. You're not old enough." And so he created this desire that I had to read them. And so I tried reading them as a early teen, did not understand them. Like, I'm not even gonna pretend. But I did feel like I was getting some satisfaction of saying, aha, now I get to do the thing that I was forbidden to do. And then I went back and revisited later in my 20s, and I believe God Emperor I read in a day. I picked it up, and that's just where I was that day. And I just read the whole thing. And God Emperor is like one of the most controversial ones too. So it's really like when I say, oh, I love that book.
Yeah, that's a lot for one day of reading. Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible though. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I'll go next because it's similar in a sense that, I got into the books as a kid, but, didn't understand half of what I thought I was, and it was probably to be cool because some of the older kids were talking about it, and it was just this really cool thing that was just beyond probably my comprehension at the time. But then getting into the film, the series, obviously the new one. I even got into the comic book. There was a comic book, well, a couple different ones, an underground one, another syndicated one, but got into the comics too. I collect, but yeah, it all started with the book, but I didn't. But for me back then, it was definitely more, I don't know, more of a vibe and a cool thing rather than truly understanding the depth of, just how deep the world was and what he created.
Well, it's definitely one of those series that I think what makes it really cool and really impactful is that your interpretation and understanding of it changes depending on what phase you are and where you're at in your own life, or at least that was my experience. Just kind of like it just very much feels like one of those pieces of media. Like I feel like when I reread it at like 50 or 60 or something, I'm probably going to have a completely different take and understanding than like where I'm at now. And in the same way, like a completely different take and understanding when I read it as a teenager or whatever. Because, and I guess to segue there, I'll go into my bit, which is I was assigned Dune in an AP English class. We had to do write a very in-depth analysis comparing a book and a movie. And so mine was Dune with Lynch's Dune movie. And
It's quite the
I don't.
pairing.
Yes.
Ooh.
And I'm pretty sure I didn't pick it out. I'm pretty sure I was assigned it, which was kind of awesome. Again, in hindsight. But like, I remember in my report just being like, you know, again, this like asshole 17-year-old kid, just like pure punk rock, like full of just like all this like anger and spite, being like, you know, this guy, it's like he took a look at the book, looked at the cover, threw it over his shoulder and said, "Let's make a fucking movie." Like, that was my report. And then
Yeah.
it was so great to later, you know, in like the last 10 years or so, where they've been talking more about like how Dune's Lynch came to be and everything, to read about how he didn't read the book and just made the movie his interpretation of what Dune was, which, you know, is why I'm very careful in how I phrase. I like the Lynch movie as a David Lynch movie and not so much as a Dune movie, because, you know, as a Lynch movie, it's exactly what I want out of a David Lynch movie. That it's fucking weird and strange. It doesn't make sense half the time, but whatever. You're just having a vibe and going with it, and that's exciting. But as a Dune movie, I have expectations. um, but yeah, I guess who wants to go next after this? Andy, Ali, Jace?
Yeah, I'll
I
dive
don't-
in.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was. I mean, it was annoyingly, it was the Lynch movie, I think, that got me
Yeah.
into it, because I saw these weird sets and pictures coming up from you know, adverts, and thinking, this looks really cool, but I have no idea what it is. So just started reading the book and went, I really like this. Again, I'm kind of with you on the film. I much prefer the sci-fi version, or now the Villeneuve version,
Yeah.
actually, as well. The but yeah,
Oh.
I got started. Dune Messiah, thankfully, is my favourite of them all. It
Mhm.
always remains. That's the one I always keep coming back to. And I think it's when you've read the second one of a series and like that more than the first,
Mhm.
then you can't really help but go on to read all the other ones as well. But yeah, and I think it's always been a weird one for me, because usually what gets me into books is the characters, and Dune for me is more one that I think it's the setting that drew me in. You know, because you know, there is obviously a lot of character there in the books, but it's not so much a book about them. They all are sort of cogs in the great machine of what's going on. It's one of the reasons I've not really got into Middle Earth, because I've still not read Lord of the Rings, which is a really bad thing for a gamer to admit. But
Oh no,
but a
we're
lot
gonna
of it
have
is
to
'cause
take away your nerd card.
I know. Well, this is. I mean, and it kind of lead into some of the stuff we did with Dune. Is that I tried reading the book. I honestly I tried. I really did. Because when the movies came out, I thought, you know, I've learned these things by osmosis, pretty much. I really should read Lord of the Rings. And look, there's one film coming out each year. I can read each one. I've got a year to do it. And I got through the first few chapters and went, I've even lost count of the hobbits. And you know, the only difference between Frodo and Bilbo was that Frodo kept saying, "Oh yeah," you know, Sam was that Sam kept saying, "Oh yeah, Mr. Frodo," and doffing his cap. And I would challenge even Lord of the Rings fans to tell me what really is the difference between Merry and Pippin. Really, but you know. Controversies here, people. But
I love it. I love it. I'm here for these hot takes.
But
Well, now I know why Andy and I are friends, because I haven't
Yeah.
read it either. And every time I try, I think, why am I wasting my time?
But
I read the
interestingly,
first one
to,
and then half of Two Towers, and that
Yeah.
like. So
but
I'm
to
also
sort of come back to it, that's kind of why when I played Lord of the Rings games, there's been like the Middle Earth game that based on the Rollmaster system and the Decipher one. I'd always read them and gone, well, this is kind of D&D. I still don't get why people are into this Tolkien thing. And then I read Cubicle 7's One Ring, which is one of my favourites, and I suddenly got, oh, now I get this Tolkien thing. It's the enchantment layers and there's some background and some history. And it made me realize that I think if Tolkien was a gamer, he would be an incredible games designer, because the setting,
yeah.
when you look into it, it's brilliant. It fits together. It's beautifully crafted. The mythology is
Ooh,
Ooh.
I think we are
Uh-oh.
ha-
He warned us. He warned us
did
about
warn
the
us.
possible computer
Yes.
attacking.
Oh,
gone. Oh,
Hey,
he's back.
and he's
probably
back.
I'm back.
Hey!
That seems to be my internet. I had to jump onto my iPad, which is a slightly better picture, and then and then as soon as I plugged it in, it said you have 10% left.
No.
It's
So
one of those days.
A plug, yeah. So it's a little more stable, but yeah. So, and that's one of the reasons why when we came to, I say I'm rambling on now, that when we came to doing the Dune role playing game. That's where I took a leaf from the Cubicle 7's One Ring, because they had this idea of going, instead of giving you all of Middle Earth, let's just focus on a little bit, and you can learn how that one works. And people who are new to this won't have the vast, the entire known universe of stuff to get used to. So we thought the same with Dune. Let's just focus on ARRAKIS, and then we can build from there. And hopefully that's one of the things that helps bring out what the setting is all about in the book. But it sort of came back to, this is what surprised me with the novels, is that it's the setting that I get, the mysterious politics and Bene Gesserit doing weird things and sandworms and all of that is what hooks me in a way that I don't think any other science fiction book has done, because it's usually the characters, and here it was the setting. And Tolkien couldn't do that, but Frank Herbert absolutely did it for me. So.
Oh, that's a really cool way to look at it too. And again, you are right. Something I had talked about in one of the tunnels for our show was just how much of the Dune setting has influenced other media. Like, again, you look at Star Wars, and what would Star Wars be without Dune, and all of the parallels therein. But yeah, let's get to Allie. Like, tell us about, how you came into the series and, everything like that.
Well, I guess I'm deviating a little bit from the norm here. I got into the series through the sci-fi miniseries. For better or worse.
No, it's good.
It's good.
I liked it. I
Yeah.
liked it.
Me too. I
I have like
unironically
4
like
copies
it.
of it.
In fact, I was so mad because I couldn't find it streaming anywhere here. I was like,
It's on. Did you try YouTube? Because I found it on YouTube.
I think I hadn't yet. I hadn't, but at the time I was also broke, so that was probably why.
Okay.
I think I had to. Yeah. I would have to buy it. Anyway, I got in through the through the miniseries. I've watched the miniseries several times over the years, but so it was always kind of something in the in my awareness. Even before that, I'm kind of aware of it, but I wasn't really deep into it. And I'm probably gonna get in a little bit of trouble here, but I didn't actually read the book until we were prepping for our game.
Gasp!
That's okay.
Well,
That's
so
cool. That's
I don't
impressive,
delve.
though, because well, I was gonna say really fast. That is impressive to me because, again, as your GM, I was very surprised with, you seem to have a very comfortable level with the world and, all the politics and everything like that. So, I feel like that kind of just speaks to you as a role player that you were able to just be so seamlessly oh yeah, I know everything and what's going on and blah, blah, blah. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, well, for me, I've played a lot of stuff with political. You have the political machinations in the background. I've played a lot of vampire.
Yes.
I was gonna say, what is Dune except vampires in space?
Exactly.
So,
Right, exactly. But for me, I think the main reason I kind of dragged my feet on reading it was because for one, I get easily distracted. So I'll get an idea in my head, but then give me a month. If I haven't done it yet, it's gone. It's over there somewhere. But then when I do read, I tend to read more fantasy fiction rather than sci-fi. And I think that it kind of got lost in the shuffle of all the stuff I like really wanted to read. But yeah, the game motivated me to actually jump into it and actually experience the story in its original format. And
Welcome.
I mean, I tried to. Oh, thank you. I tried to channel I tried to channel the stuff I took away from that into the character. It's a lot of fun.
Yay. And then let's wrap with Jace.
Okay, so the Lynch movie came out 2 years after I was born. So when I was growing up, my dad was obsessed with it for a while. So eventually I actually watched it. I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and I was like, I have no idea what I just sat through. And there's just no way to compute that as a 10-year-old. There's just not.
Yeah.
But as I got a little older, I decided, all right, I'm going to read the books, because apparently the books are nothing like that movie. And I did what I always do. I found something and I absorbed all of it, because I can't stop. And so I've read all the books, and I've loved the sci-fi version. I thought that was actually pretty good, even if they changed a few little things, but nothing that really mattered that much. Finding out they were making another one, the one that just came out, rather, I was so excited for. And then to find out there was an RPG coming out. I knew about the old RPG system that was, I forget what it was based on, but I have the book somewhere. The new one, though, I was super excited for, because it was in conjunction with what I was about to also see on screen. So I've been I just absorbed all the information I could about Dune over the years. And I love the Dune universe. For me, it was definitely the same thing. It was the universe that got me more than individual characters.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, for everybody who is joining us, we are doing a roundtable talking about Dune: Adventures in the Imperium by Modifius Entertainment. So chatters, if you guys have questions for our lovely panelists, please feel free to post them in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to just keep rolling through chatting Dune. So yeah, my next question is going to be for Rachel and Andy, which is basically, as we've mentioned and sort of loosely talked about, Dune is a universe with a lot of high concept stuff. Again, the spice in and of itself is strange and intangible and does all sorts of things. So I am curious about what was the most challenging aspect of the Dune universe to adapt for a tabletop role-playing game?
For me, the ones that I sort of red flagged before we started, primarily because it's a bugbear in every role-playing game, is prophecy. It's that old thing of, like, if you have people, thankfully your characters are not going to be able to do it to the same level that Paul Atreides does. But if you have characters, and not just one who happens to be the seer in the group, but potentially a whole character group of people who can tell the future with a surprisingly accurate degree, that makes things really difficult for your GM. So I mean, it was one of the things we had when we were doing the GM chapter was no, we've got to have sections on this. We've got to look into, and to a certain degree, give the players much the same advice you would usually give, is that this is the reason prophecy is usually slightly vague, to give the GM some wiggle room. But it's those sort of things it's that hyper perception of Dune. But luckily, when we got into it, we discovered that when you have people who are doing things where, you twitched your lip in an imperceptible way, so now I know you hate that guy and like that guy, and you've killed someone before today, and you had Marmite for breakfast. It's that. Luckily, you're like, how do you possibly do this? But what we realised is actually if everyone's doing it, it becomes a basic perception test because, and it was another one of the reasons we decided that we were going to go a little bit hog wild with this one and let the players have very powerful characters to start off with. It's not so rare to find in role playing these days, but we did not want to start you all at level 1 because the abilities and the powers that are available are usually just far higher, and they're really cool. We want people to be able to use the voice and spot weird things and have their mentats, predict the future from pure calculation alone. Those are the cool things you could do. We didn't want to say, oh, maybe in 2 books' time you can play a Bene Gesserit character. The only one we have saved that is a viable player character but saved is the Ginaz Swordmasters, which I keep getting nagged on. When are they coming in? They will. We're saving them for a higher level play thing and maybe a few extra bits and pieces as well. But
I am really fast to interrupt because that is something that one of our players brought up was, just like kind of that sad face of like, well, I don't get an archetype, and so I'm really happy to hear that this is intentional. It's going to be awesome, and
there is essentially it's the problem with the Swordmasters is that it's right. My character's just able to go and train as a Ginaz Swordmaster. Right, I'll see you all in 5 years of game time later. Right, okay, that's. Or are we just going to skip ahead 5 years? Or what are the rest of you going to do? It just doesn't work. And then the other thing of, oh right, now I've come back from that, I now have a sword fighting ability where I can toss a Fremen across the room. And it's like, right, okay, what were the rest of you doing in 5 years since that? It's they are extra. So we're going to give them something exceptionally powerful. I'm looking at some really incredible things to really balance that power. But we will also, when we start bringing them in, we start to bring in. I don't want to say too much more about this because Modiphius will kill me. But we are, bringing some even more powerful things to come at that level. When we reach that level of game, that's when you are. And I think we've always been open about this. Is that we set you up initially as agents of your house on ARRAKIS. In the next upcoming supplements, we'll look at you possibly taking over some of the roles of your house, which we also allude to in the books as they are. In later things, we'll look at you running the house, and as such being the sort of characters who can go to the Imperial throne room and discuss things with the Emperor. That's the level we want to take things up to. And then we can tear it all down and bring Paul Atreides into it. So it's, there's so many places we can go.
We seem to have skipped ahead a little, apparently.
Yeah.
Apparently.
We'll ramble on.
I'm excited though. Like this
No.
is cool. Getting
Our
like
game,
teasers.
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But well, I mean, again though, like I with our game, I really wanted to, have a story that could be stuck in a season if it needed to be, or expanded out to more. And especially as other books and things come out, like got my eye on that ARRAKIS book. Super excited about that. When does that has it been officially released yet, or are we still is it in pre-order?
Yes and no. It's in pre-order at the moment still.
Awesome.
We get it's off to print. It's just printing and shipping is horrific.
Oh yeah.
But no, I mean, it's quite nice that we usually print in such quantities, and we certainly did with the core book. That the Lithuanian printer who does most role-playing products these days, they actually had to buy in new rolls of paper to do the amount that we needed. We were the logjam that if other companies were being told your book's going to be late, it's because we've bought all the paper because we've got a lot to do. No, Sand and Dust is available. It's in the PDF already for people who have pre-ordered. So we won't be releasing that PDF to retail until it's out to buy retail. But if you pre-order, you will get the PDF right now.
Exciting.
So
Get on that.
And I'm clearly going to have to go pre-order.
Yeah, cool. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. I've seen it. I've got it.
They're quite good with this. Modiphius, do make sure if you have pre-ordered, you will be getting it before it hits. It won't be a case of maybe when it's come into the shops, we might deign to send you a copy. They're actually very good with their pre-orders these days, so they do get those out. And we've got our collector's cover version for it as well. It looks so good. Our graphic designer, Chris, is a genius. He has done some incredible stuff.
I mean, again, the book is gorgeous. It is one of the most beautiful tabletop games I've gotten in recent years. Like, you guys really knocked it out of the park. But really fast, though, I did want to hear from Rachel on her experiences, because, you know, like, you came in as one of the writers and everything like that, and I imagine, you know, that presents its own complications in like adapting all of that.
Well, one of the things that I am really excited about with Dune is that Andy has let me write lots of the adventures, which I really enjoy doing. And I fancy myself an interactive story designer, so perhaps I should like to write interactive stories. But so yeah, every time a new book comes up, I'm sort of like, okay, if somebody else wants to turn writing the adventure, that's fine. But yo, I'm still here. So I have gotten to write the one that's coming out in the ARRAKIS book. And I also wrote one. I don't. Can we talk about that? Time is a Narrow Door. That's coming out right afterward.
Yeah, just because it's very nearly out, I must actually ask if I can send you a copy. We are.
Yeah. So it's because that's the one that dealt with prophecy, and because the reason why it was called Time is a Narrow Door is because it's the idea of you can only see this tiny sliver as you walk through the door, and it's only after you have entered that space or entered that time do you see all the things that could happen. But one of the cool things about prophecy in Dune was there was always 1,000 roads. It was always, how do I find which one is going to be the true one? And so I think that's part of the reason why prophecy works in the RPG. It's just like what he was saying, like everybody has it and everybody's right in their own slice of universe.
We had one of my and I wanted to say when you brought it up about the prescience and everything, one of the players in my game chose that path of just like imbibing a massive amount of spice and going on the weirdest trip.
There's always going to be one. Right. There's always going to be one.
Oh yeah. So it was really fun because I basically gave him this word vomit of text. Like I want to say it was like a full page of text of just literally like your brain is being overwhelmed with all of these different possibilities depending on the slightest thing you change and the ripples and repercussions of each thing. So it's like, you know, in you see you're on ARRAKIS living with the love of your life and you have 2 children and they're beautiful. You see your wife stabbing you in the chest as she like dumps your body out in an airlock. You see you know, your children rising up and becoming monsters. You see, you know, like just basically like just a bombardment of choices of like, this is what, you know, welcome to the future, have fun. Yeah, I guess this is a great chance to take it then to, you know, my players and my fellow GM of just from your guys' perspective, playing the 2D20, running the 2D20 game, what has been something that you thought was the coolest aspect of the role-playing game? So, you know, I don't know, Rob, if you want to start it off as another GM, like...
Yeah, definitely. No, I have a list of things that I like. One little issue, but the main thing, I mean, just first off, back to Andrew and Allie talking about, you know, the setting over characters and stuff. I think first off, that's a number one reason why I think not only does it work as this sort of epic, but as a tabletop role-playing game, it can draw you in because you don't, and this also to Allie about not starting with the books, you don't have to feel like you have to lock into this tremendous amount of lore and play the tabletop role-playing game, which should have full player agency and be a true open world, right? A sandbox of gameplay. You don't have to go into that feeling locked into this lore. Now it lays out, there's a daunting like 60 plus pages of dates and things, and it lays it all out in the book itself. So you don't need to read all the books and stuff. It's take the role-playing game. I love it. Dive in. You can get enough to get the setting, and then play from there. And that's my favorite part. That's why I also like Fallout as well with what Modifius did. Is I just like the fact that it calls back and pushes to this genre and this thing, Dune, for the sake of this. But like I said, you don't have to feel so locked into these epic characters and things to where you can't create your own world within this world. You know what I mean? Like, you can still have free player agency. And then as far as my favorite things, I mean, I love how there's the primary and secondary domain. I love the idea of it's not just what you're doing, but what you're striving to do. Your secondary and like where you're headed. You're kind of, as a business, you're setting your kind of your goals and your plans. It feels like. I love the idea of momentum. It's just like in Fallout, in the 2D20 system, and me first starting with Fallout, getting into it, and then into Dune. I love the aspect of like action points, which I'm finding in Dune is the momentum point aspect for the group. I mean, there's the individual stuff, the determination, but as much as I love that, and I love, well, before I get into what I don't like about it, I love the fact that in Dune, you have to burn at every scene. I wanted to say that because when you play Fallout and others, you find yourself stacking up this sort of maxing it out, and you're sitting on it. You don't know when to use it. And you're like, oh, should I use it now or later? I love the fact that Dune is like this constant, like, burn it in the scenes as you have it. I think that's really important. But I don't like how, what is it? The action points are the same as advancement points, the AP and AP aspects. So like if you're into Modifius and the 2D20 systems, and you play Fallout and you get into Dune, that was a little bit confusing in taking on the two systems, because I like when you're diving into 2D20, how the 2D20 works, matching the drive with a skill, the same that you can, the endless amounts of combinations there. But like I said, some of the terminology, like AP, the advancement points and things, it's like, okay, let me wrap my head around the quick abbreviations matching similar abbreviations in other systems, still within the 2D20 system, but meaning completely different things. So that was my only little, like, I wish they would have just kind of matched up a little bit of that terminology.
I think, if I may interrupt for a second, if I recall correctly, the way that the AP in Dune is used is also very similar to the Star Trek 2D20, from what I remember vaguely. Because for me, at least, I found it was way easier to transition from Star Trek's 2D20 to Dune's 2D20, because Star Trek has momentum, determination, and all of that. Whereas and maybe Andy, if you can correct me, it seemed like Fallout was one of the earlier releases of the 2D20, whereas Star Trek was like a bit further on down the line, and then obviously Dune is the latest release.
I think they started it with, I think Conan was one of their first ones. Fallout, a bit of a weird story, because they did an early version that was sort of their battle game with a role-playing element, and then that was really successful. They thought, oh, we should do Fallout as a proper full 2D20 game. So there's two versions from Modifius, but they're slightly different, and they sit either side of Dune, which is kind of annoying, because when Dune came out, I think we broke all their records for pre-order, and then the Fallout 2D20 came out, and that broke all my records. So I was like, oh, I'm doing better than Star Trek, and then, oh, Fallout's doing better than me, is it? Right, fine, never mind.
Well, so
no,
so
I
like,
love
I'm wondering. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, focusing on the positive, that, like I said, just that terminology thing, but I understand, the different systems are going to have their different writers or different things. Like I said, that little abbreviation common with the different, usage was just a little throw off thing with the AP versus AP.
Yeah, this is what we're trying to do a bit more now, because it's one of the things I love about 2D20 is that Nathan takes that system every time. He's Modiphius' system designer, so he's the creator of the 2D20 system, and he always does the system for each game they do, but he also always adapts that system for what that new game needs. So it's not like there was a time in the 80s when every game had the house system from that, and it was like whether it fitted or not, these settings were sort of crowbarred into whatever the house system was. And Modiphius does it the other way around, and they say, right, does this system need to stretch to work at the best way it can for this new setting? That's why there's a lot of very different things with Dune than you would for Star Trek, but also a lot of the base system you already know.
That's what I love is
there's
that base stuff that I love is those combinations and stuff.
Yeah, so it's why we put in the starter, in the introduction to Dune, if you know 2D20, this is what we've changed. Because a lot of people go, how much is new? How much do I have to read if I already know this? And we want to give you a heads up at the start to say, right, if you know this system already, we have a bit of this and a bit of this, but this is new and this is new, so you can skip to those chapters and get a handle really quickly and get playing, which is, of course, the most important thing. But
yeah, I mean,
Nathan did an amazing job.
That was definitely, though, really fast. Like a major perk, I think, of the system is that creating a character, for the most part, seemed like it took like 15, 20 minutes and was pretty simple, painless, and straightforward. You know, I remember it was very similar with Fallout. With Star Trek, I had a harder time because that was like a lot of stuff to choose from. But I really like that the 2D20 systems are really easy to dive into for new players. You know, especially if you have people at your table who have never gamed before. It's a really easy system to you know, just really dig into. And you know, like you said, just get in and get playing. For my part, as a GM and as a player, I really love the momentum system, just because I think it's really cool how you can get rewarded for going over threshold, and also, you know, so it never feels like anything's being wasted. And also, I really enjoy that give and take between player and GM, because it really makes the game feel more like a collaborative experience. And you know, we had mentioned the various concepts and stuff. I had a bunch of players with hyper awareness, and at least I believe it was hyper awareness, or was it? Yeah. So
passive.
oh, passive scrutiny.
Passive
sorry.
awareness.
Passive scrutiny,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, passive scrutiny. So for those who are watching who aren't familiar with the system, passive scrutiny is basically a talent where every time somebody's in a new scene, they get a free piece of information without having to spend momentum or anything about what's happening in the scene. And I remember Paul, one of my players, was flat out just like, listen, you know, this is going to drive you crazy because you have to do all this extra work. And I'm like, no, because, you know, this is you guys being invested in my story and my world, and like I get to give you details that are in my head of like dumb random stuff that like I don't think will, you know, ever make it to game, but like, you know, are cool little tidbits about this person. And especially in a universe like Dune, those little details are important, you know. Again, like you notice that this person who usually has her coffee to the left side of her, now the coffee's on the right side of her, or something like that. Like you can throw in these cool little details to reward these players for these cool talents, and I love that that's a tool that GMs get to utilize. And when it came to combat, like it took a little getting used to, because I'm not used to a system that's so narrative focused. So that was a little like I had to like read a lot just to make sure I understood things correctly. But I really loved how you got divided things between warfare, skirmish, dueling and, you know, the not necessarily direct combat stuff, but like espionage and, you know, all of those things. And I thought that was, we ran a big assault, and it was really cool because basically I just set it up. So it was like, okay, so the outward storming the fortress, this is warfare, and we're going to maneuver troops and do move actions with, you know, the warfare rules. And then it's like in the house, now we're in skirmishing mode because you're going from like place to place and dealing with groups of antagonists or whatever. And then at the end of it, we got to use the dueling mechanic, which was super fun. And again, having the momentum bit of it. The duel was between our swordmaster guy and a Sardaukar who had gotten bought off by the Lord. And the player ended up getting like, I want to say like 3 criticals or something crazy like that. So he's like, hey, can I spend these momentum to do something super badass? And I'm like, yes, you can.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing that, again, you know, you get to deliver these high impact moments and these really cool cinematic experiences because the system isn't that crunchy. But you know, there's still that like, oh God, if I fail this roll, I am a splat on the floor. But he did it, so
Oh yeah.
it turned out to be like cool, epic role reversal.
I think
And then the other thing
Yeah.
just
Go ahead.
with what you just said, I think it's great for streamers. You know, it's a very role play heavy system where, like you
Yes.
said, you know, I don't want to say there's not a lot of crunch because there is a lot to learn and ways that you can use things. Just like
Yes.
all the systems, different combinations of your drive skill, the momentum, all the little intricacies that make the game what it is. But it's less on the combat side to where the crunch is just this and this equals these
Yes.
numbers that you're figuring out, where it's more of affecting a scene or a situation more so.
Correct.
So it's like more on the skill check side versus combat crunch feeling. Hopefully that made sense to someone out there. But you know, streaming, I feel like for streamers it's awesome because it's just so role play heavy. You can cosplay, get into it. It's very, like you said, setting feeling. Like it's just such a cool vibe. Very vibe.
Exactly.
This is where I think,
Oh yeah.
it's built that Nathan did so well with it, because again, this is all Nathan's design. This is not my bit. Is that it was? I always find in most systems you have, if you have, I really hate crunchy as a term, but you have the really rules heavy ones. You've got to learn all this stuff. But on the other end, where I'm more comfortable with more narrative ones, I often find narrative systems sort of say, and just tell a story. And everyone goes, yeah, but how? What are my options? What do I do? And so it's always my goal, and I think Nathan really hit that with this, is to give you all these options to do narrative, interesting things, but always have a solid system underneath that says, right, well, when you've sorted your narrative, roll that dice, and you get to add this to it, and now you know if you succeeded or not. So you've always got that foundation underneath you to help you step your narrations onto that. And I'm a big fan again of letting the system do that thing where, as you say, if a player says, who else is in this bar? As a GM, you can turn to them and say, okay, you tell me. You know, well, oh right, well, there's a guy in the corner looking at us. Is he friendly? Spend a point of momentum. He might be. You know, it's all of that backwards and forwards. I really like. Some GMs probably hate this, but I really like letting the players add to the game as you go, because as a GM, I rather enjoy. Oh, that was a curveball. Right, I can work it in. I can do that.
But that's what makes it a great role play, I think, is because even like you said, if they are doing this situation and you're like, well, underneath it, here's this system, so now roll it. Let's see if you succeeded. But again, it's not that simple, because it's not like in combat where it's like roll it, see if you succeeded or failed. Now here's the damage, right? In the role play, it's like now roll it. It's not just succeed or fail. Now it becomes this, succeed or fail within what you were trying to do, but now it lets the GM take it in a whole new narrative now. Was it a failed or successful story plot change, or where it goes? Like, it's just so role play heavy. I love it.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that ran us into a little bit of a problem at one point, because I had another podcast where someone wanted me to come and talk about the difference between architect and agent play. because they were like, "Oh, we don't quite get the difference." And most of the conversation was, "Well, actually, the reason we probably didn't explain this very well in the rule book is that there isn't really a difference. So that's why we don't go into it a lot in the rule book. The kind of the thing is to say it's just which assets you use." It's like, well, how do you know which one you use? Well, it depends what your players decide to pick, and it's like, oh, it's that easy. Yeah, it's that easy.
Yeah.
But we should have made it clearer in the book to say, oh, because you're so used to games that go, now you move to this mode, now you have moved to X mode, now you've moved to combat mode or something, and there are all these different rule set options, and you go, no, it's just a sort of different flavor to give you an idea that you can do that and to funnel your narrative a little better when you're doing it. It's all the differences.
Well, really fast though, speaking of moving things along, the wonderful Rachel sadly has to leave us right now, but I wanted to make sure that we get your outro in there. Please tell us, first of all, again, where can we find you on the internet? What, apart from the amazing ARRAKIS book that's coming out, what projects do you have that you want to plug? This is your space. Go, my darling.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm blaming this on the Second Inquisition from Vampire the Masquerade because last week I was supposed to do my Port Saga AMA, which the Port Saga is the audio drama I do for Vampire the Masquerade V5, and California decided to have a brownout. And so we lost our feed as soon as we started, and everybody's like, okay, next week then. And I was like, okay, I think I can make that work because I had already agreed to come by and say hello. So, but now I have to leave and I have to go to another Twitch, another stream. So, yes, the project that I'm just finished up was Vampire the Masquerade Port Saga. It is an audio drama. Please go download it. It's Apple, Spotify, Google, anything that you can get a sound thing related to, you can get it. And yeah, so that's really what I'm working on right now, and mostly kind of building out my life as a sound designer, which I really I've been enjoying it. Yeah.
It's so
I must add,
exciting.
it's lovely to talk to you properly as well, because we've been emailing for months now
Yes.
on the game.
So Andy and I have only spoken in email for
Wow.
like
Our show
a
brought
year and a
you
half at this
visually
point.
together.
Yeah.
It's been a year and a half at this point. So we finally just got to meet each other face to face. So this special moment is for you, Jen.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it was my birthday yesterday, so this is an incredible birthday
Happy
present. It's
birthday.
Allie's birthday today.
Yes,
Like,
happy birthday. It's
Oh,
my
happy
birthday
birthday,
today,
Allie.
technically.
Well, yeah, no, thank you so much for having me here. And again, apologies that I have to bounce. But hopefully I'll get to come back again and do some more stuff with you guys.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Definitely.
Hope
All right,
so.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good night.
But yeah, so I guess transitioning from there, Allie, Jace, let's talk about your experiences as players. Like, what was your favorite aspect of the system? And I tried my best to give something of everything with what we ran, and it was pretty fun.
Would you like to start, or shall I?
You go ahead first.
Okay. My favorite part of the system is that your stats they're not just normal numbers that represent physical or mental characteristics that you're supposed to have, like is present in a lot of games. In this system, it's what am I good at and what matters to me. And everything about your character is built for those two things. And I just really love that the character's ambition and focuses are all about who they are as a person and what matters to them more than just numbers on a page. And I really enjoyed the talents, especially what they allowed me to do as a mentat. That was a lot of fun. Even if I did almost get everybody killed at the end. That's not the point.
Sometimes the dice gods are not with us. But
no,
it makes
they were
things
not.
exciting. But that is something that I do like also about the system is that, when you do epic fail some of those rolls, you can, you get AP, So again, like it sort of softens the blow of like of just, oh god, I really fumbled this roll and that doesn't feel good. But I really love that you guys turned that into like, no, this is failure is a learning experience, so take this experience to learn new things. Like that is such
Yeah.
a clever, like just such a clever design idea that I haven't really seen in other games as much. And I really love that. And then also something I love about the 2d20 stuff is the succeed at a cost. So you know, again, when your players are dealing with these really tough challenges, and the dice just aren't with you, but you want to move forward narratively in progressing the story, I really like that you can encourage your players to, you know, again, give you threat, give you the succeed at a cost, and these other sorts of mechanics that bring in this collaborative way of encouraging your players to sacrifice something for the sake of achieving their goals. And that just leads to so much incredible role play and story, and is really, really cool. And again, from a player perspective, from what I've experienced in Fallout and Star Trek, and you know, as a GM for Dune, I like that it doesn't make the oh, I failed feel as bad, because you're looking at it more as I'm contributing to more story. Allie?
Well, I think like I've been playing in a Star Trek game for myself for a little while. Off, not a stream thing, just a Star Trek thing. So I've been fairly familiar with how at least one of the other 2d20 games works. So it was fairly easy to transition into this, and but I think part of what I like about just the system in general is that kind of flow to it that that momentum provides, especially with Dune, and like, well, you got to use it or you're gonna lose it. It kind of promotes this back and forth of kind of, you know, well, we've built it up, but we got to make sure to spend it before, you know, before it goes away, which encourages you to actually, like, you know, do these cool things. Like, you know, I'm going to use some momentum to get some extra information here, or I'm going to use it to boost one of my die rolls to make damn sure I get that roll I want. There's a few times it just didn't work out anyway, but it was a lot of fun, and it made, honestly, even the failures made for some excellent role play, and that's and that, I think, was really not just a testament to how much the system encourages that, but how the players I've been playing with have encouraged that, and our wonderful storyteller, of course. I mean, honestly, that episode, by the way, with the duel, the duel is one of my two favorite moments in the entire series we've done so far. The other favorite moment also happened in that freaking episode, and you know exactly which one it is, Jen.
Yeah. Allie's
my
character
first use of the voice. Yeah.
It was so cool. And I want to say, like this is a moment, like this was a moment where, as a GM, I've never been like prouder of a player, where you know, because we were talking earlier about how important it is to have those like really cool iconic things like the voice, and available to players, so they can live their Dune experience in the way that like they want to. And like the big bad guy of their rival house, like, he was coming off super smug because his action was just going to be like, all right, so I have this whole fortress to rig to blow. You're all locked in when you're with me. No one's getting out of here alive. Welcome to Con Lee, motherfuckers. But that was all like foiled because she just rolled up and used the voice, and I'm like, all right, this is gonna be really, really hard. And she's like, no, I'm going for it. I'm like, balls to the wall, we got this. Like, and it was incredible, and it was exactly what you want out of that situation, because that high risk, high reward. So yeah, you know, just using the voice command of "you will yield," so powerful, so iconically Bene Gesserit. And like, you know, again, as a GM, it's like, yeah, I have this other thing planned, but it's like, nope, like, this is way too cool, we're going with this.
And I love I actually do like the aspect of how in the talent itself, it illustrates that, like, yeah, you can buy up to 3 automatic successes by giving the storyteller threat, but for every one you buy, it increases how obvious this usage of the power is. And it's I love that little detail. And honestly, Jen worked it in so well, because like I bought, even with the 3 successes, it was not going to be an automatic thing. Like it was like we needed 5 for this, is what she decided. And I was like, but I hit it on the mark, and this guy just like kind of like lurches out of his chair like a marionette and drops to his knees. Like he's just, you know, like struggling against what every fiber of his being is trying to get him to do. And it was
a great scene.
Such a great moment. Oh,
this is always what's really cool when you make any of these games, and you sort of go, oh, you know, you put this text down in a book, and it's unlike novels where you hand this exactly as it is and get people read it exactly as you made it. It's one of the things I absolutely love, is hearing people who've done this thing, and you go, you did that with it? I never would have thought that. That's awesome. Or how something you did has actually worked, because you put these things out and you go, oh, I do hope it works. And because this is where, I mean, we've got a lot more leeway as role-playing writers, because if you make a board game and it doesn't work, people won't play it because it doesn't work. You know, you have to get all of those rules. I mean, Modiphius does some board games and has a massive development system for doing it. And I'm not saying we throw out the role-playing games. You play test them, but if you've got something wrong in a role-playing game, people will just pick it up and go, yeah, I can change that. Or they've probably rewritten half of what you did anyway for their own home system. And that's phenomenal. I don't think any other art form does that. You know, sort of pick it up and go, right, where are we going to run with that? And you see the most amazing things come back from when you put something out there. It's just so great to see. And it's mainly great to see you've had a great time, and the system has allowed you to do the gaming that you want to do, because that's always, I think, the biggest thing, because there are some systems that get in the way of letting you play the game you want to do. And so I think it's the best thing you can hear back about your game is we could play the game as we expected to, that would let us do what we do, you know, and it was there for you. That's phenomenal news to hear from Mike. That really makes me happy to hear. But,
oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
It's that perfect. It's that balance of. I know you hate the word crunch, but you know it's that perfect balance of crunch versus role play, where you can, you know, you lean on that original, you know, game master. I do a series of GM tips as one of the things I've been putting out for years. I mean, lots of game masters do, you know, and one of the main things you hear there is you never want to tell players no, you know, even if it goes against, you know, certain things within a scene or something happens, it might be a no. But it would come out like, yes, but, you know, there's always that but is your form of the no, where the narrative kind of a plot change, a twist, something happens. And I think inherently it's Dune, the role-playing game, the way that you and all the writers and creators have put this together, it's just inherently like that. It's role-play heavy and it's perfect balance. I love it.
I mean, this does, I'd say, depend on your players, because there are some players who say, no, you're just not doing that.
Well, yeah.
That is my lot. I like to think I won't say no, but somehow I'm always driven to somehow saying it.
I mean, I think that's also something that's really cool about, you know, the book and the system also, though, is, you know, there is a section I think it's in the Game Master section where it talks about that, about, you know, how, again, like, Dune is this universe that is highly political, highly social, like, you know, people are picking up subtleties and intricacies and stuff like that. And your players may not have those same skills and abilities to represent the, you know, hyper aware game theory masterminds that they're portraying for this game. And that can definitely be something that, you know, again, can reduce fun in that way of just, you know, I don't have the social skills to back up this, you know, political mastermind that I'm supposed to be playing. But the, you know, again, the game gives you tools as a GM, as a player, and even within the mechanics of the system itself to sort of mitigate some of that. And also, you know, like, and I said it before earlier too, what I really love about this system is that it really encourages that collaborative aspect of, you know, your GM is working with you in as much as they are creating these challenges against you. And I think that is just something that is really unique to the 2D20 system, is that it is something that is built into it. And I really believe that with Dune in particular, you guys taking the time to write all of the out of character, you know, player and party management expectations, and, you know, setting up all of the things to ensure player comfort and safety. Like, I really love that that's become a major focus in every RPG that's been coming out. Like, it's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big. I mean, you get a certain amount of flack from a certain quarter, saying, you know, oh, why have you included all these safety tools? And I go, you know, I don't need those for my game. So, well, if you've been doing this long enough, you probably don't need half the stuff we've written in the GM discussion. But I don't see you complaining that we've discussed the 3-act model for explaining scenario. Right? So, on particularly, and I think it's because I'm sort of a little bit half and half with some of these because I'm very old now, and you do get a bit of a why are people telling me how to run my game? But of course they're not. You couldn't, and these are. I've done some very. I played a Sabat campaign, which was.
I love
very,
Sabat.
Yeah, and I have a tendency when I'm running things, I don't want it to be just blood and gore. It got very nasty. Things I won't even describe, even vaguely, in vague terms at all. And I was very lucky because I had exactly the right group of players. But even then, as a GM who's been doing this a while, I can miss things, and you can get. And it's good to, I think, remind people that these tools can be useful, and you should, consider using them. But, I mean, generally, I would go sort of.
Especially
there's things I do at a convention or with my own group that I would never dream of doing at a convention. But having these systems there is just a good way to highlight that you might not know your players as well as you think you do, and maybe you should think about it. And it's good that it's in there now, and that's one of the reasons we made a point of, and Modiphius is very much behind all this sort of thing, to make sure that we do add those tools and just underline those, because if your game is really good, it will affect people in the same way that you can be in tears. And if people say, oh, I don't need this because these, I was going, well, does that mean your game isn't quite as good as it could be? Because why isn't it affecting people? Why isn't it getting into people's emotions and feelings? Because these stories matter, and they should matter, like anything else. So you have to be careful.
To a GM, it's a tool, like you just said. That session 0, it lets me know, lines and veils and these boundaries of where I can push things, where I need to avoid, and it allows me to know, okay, now I can manipulate these certain subject matters and avoid these ones, and kind of, it's a learning process, and it's allowed me to have some amazing gameplay where, like, people have gotten into tears, and things have gotten very emotional, both joy and sorrow, and just all the the gambit of emotions that you can think of. But it's because of that, and I think that session 0 stuff, to the people that might say, oh, I don't need that, I know it. Well, maybe you don't know your players as well as you think you do. Once you get into a session 0, you might learn something, and even if you don't, then don't use that part if you don't want to. Like you said, the rules are there. People pick and choose what they want to do, and in this day and age, I think there's a lot of digital play, so it's more important than ever to have a good session zero and go over that, because you're playing with new people all the time. Whether you're a streamer or not. I know people that don't stream and yet they play through Discord or Roll20 or these sites where they're meeting new people all the time, and you never know what might, what kind of trauma and drama people want to avoid and have been through, and it's important.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, it's about playing the game that you all want to play, even if it's not about anyone getting traumatized. Someone might go, you know what, I just don't want to play a game with spiders in it. Even if you just, I just find it unsettling. Yeah, okay, let's knock the spiders on the head. There is a certain type of DM that goes, oh, I want to run the game this way, and if you don't want to play the game with me, then or at least it's going to happen like this. And it's like, well, you want a game everyone's going to enjoy, whatever that level. And if someone doesn't want to play that game, then will it really kill you to adapt it a little bit for them?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And in particular for a system or for a setting like Dune, there are a lot of heavy content warnings with the series of a lot of awful things that happen in various ways. We put a lot of fails on things, but again, the Harkonnen are pretty awful.
Oh yeah.
And
I think that's important. I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's something I forgot I wanted to mention at the beginning when we were talking about the favorite parts of Dune, and I think that's one of my favorite parts, because I'm a big, obvious Cybernation Uncensored, my brand, very cyberpunk heavy. We play a lot of Cyberpunk Red, the Artalsorian system and stuff. But to me, within that, there's a balance. There's like a lot of dystopian dark stuff, but a lot of comedy too, and almost like an anime feel to it. And you can kind of push both boundaries. Oh, yeah. Whereas Dune, to me, it really taps into my serious side, and I'm very plot hook heavy. I love dropping awesome twists and plot hooks and things like that into any campaign I'm running for any system. And Dune it screams that sort of shit to me. I love it for that, because of it just has that sort of, I don't know, just seriousness about it. It's very hard to joke around while playing Dune, and I like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the problems I noticed we run into as we go, because obviously one of the things Modiphius particularly, and we wanted to do as well with Dune, is support obviously diversity and that sort of thing, racial, gender diversity and everything. So we've tried to reflect that in the art and make sure that we've got characters in the game like that. But of course the problem is in Dune, pretty much everyone's a bad guy. So you want to add positive gay, trans, people of color role models in there, but as soon as you've made them a character in Dune, they're probably really unpleasant. It's a really hard path to navigate, because we put them in and they become almost negative by default, because nobody's a good guy in this.
But I think when it's like that, then nobody's negative. It just becomes this balance of, it's this survival, and it's this, just trying to find your place in this universe and shit. And I think it's very serious. It's awesome.
Hopefully we found the right balance, but I'm a middle-class straight white guy, so I am not the person to judge whether we got it right or not. I can only hope that we push through those things and hope that we get the right response. But it's a thing that Modiphius very much looks to want to make inclusive games.
Well,
it's very much
I think for that, Ali and Jace, you both have incredible perspectives on each of those regards. If you want to talk about your experiences, Jace was playing a non-binary character, and Ali, I will leave you to talk about Cassandra.
Yes, actually. So one of the things that came into play when we were developing our characters for this is, while there are some very kind of hardline opinions on various in various fan-made stuff about say how Bene Gesserit abilities work, how the whole why can they only tap into the feminine, why does it just straight up kill all the men that try to undergo the same process. We got to talking about because well, first off, I'm a trans woman, and that subject popped into my head basically immediately. How would that affect some people of differing gender identities? Because while when doing research for this, I found like fan-made like lore videos that were talking about working in like chromosomes and that sort of genetic stuff into it. That doesn't actually come up in the text like at all when talking about how the Bene Gesserit abilities actually function. And I feel like even some of the quotes from Paul at a certain point kind of fall into this interesting kind of area of identity, and that's something I kind of wanted to explore with Cassandra, and it didn't come up in the game. But Cassandra herself, I'm playing is a trans woman. She's a trans woman, Bene Gesserit. She has not undergone the process to try to become a Reverend Mother, but it's something that I wanted to kind of approach and explore in kind of a in this space and see what we could do with it. And I was sad that we never actually got to that point.
Yeah.
But
it's a very good question, because there are a lot of things in Dune that obviously are locked into where Frank Herbert was writing in the 60s. And I mean, the one that usually comes to mind actually is atomics, is thinking, in 10,000 years in the future, still the thing everyone's terrified of is atomic weaponry. And I'm thinking that it's always felt to me a little bit, really? You haven't made anything even worse than that? Surely humanity could do worse in another 10,000 years. So I'd always imagined that the Dune atomics are, world-destroying sort of things.
Yeah.
But it's also nice that you think there are certain technologies where I would like to think, when it comes to trans issues in Dune, that the technology is so advanced, it's almost like you go, oh, I want to transition. The physical aspects of that are quite easy for a doctor and a surgery to just go sort of ping.
Well,
beyond
that,
like the Bene Tleilaxu have face dancers, which can just change their form and gender expression and whatever they like, their physical forms as they like, however they like. And it's like, so why couldn't there be some kind of like easily accessible, especially for like these noble characters, like.
But
exactly.
And there was also the point too, if I may add really quickly, which was basically that again, the Bene Gesserit ultimately, their abilities come from just the mastery of self, where inside and out they have complete and utter control over not only their bodies but who they are mentally, and that mental fortitude and complete knowledge of who and what you are exactly is what gives them that strength to be able to have that mind over matter control. So like that's how I was looking at it, as a storyteller when Ali approached asking to explore this sort of thing. Is like, well, yeah, no, obviously, like your character is a woman, so like why would that not be a thing? Like what does the physicality, like how this character was born matter with who who and how they see themselves? Like that is the thing that is important.
I mean, the thing is, as you say, one of the things I love about the Bene Gesserit is was because we know that Paul Atreides and Farad learn their ways, so it's not that aspect. Their training can't be done by men. I just love the idea there's a group of women who went, you know what, we figured something out. Are we going to let the men have this? Hell no. Because they're only going to use this to screw with us. So keep this. But when you come down to the physical aspect of the water of life, I think it's an incredible character moment. That however advanced the technology is, when something that you take, can transform a woman into a powerful Reverend Mother, will kill a man. If you're trans, that's a fascinating character thing to think. Even if you've got, I'm convinced 99%, would you roll the dice on a 1% that's going to kill you? It's an amazing part of, you'd be nervous. I mean, even every woman, it could kill a woman who's doing it as well.
Yeah,
anyone.
like there's
So,
still that chance.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a great character moment for your character to go through that experience and think, what will you do with it? I hope that it's a thing we'll be able to ask the Herbert Estate to, what their view on it is when we come to doing more on the Bene Gesserit, because it's I think these days it's a thing we have to add into books and things. I would like.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And I was very pleased. I mean, I have to say, I was very pleased that we introduced gay characters, for instance, in some of the adventures, and there was the estate had passed without notice. There was no, oh, we've noticed these are two boys together or something. There was so hopefully they'll be on board with if we want to explore some of these issues as well. But,
And if I can actually chime
Yeah,
in there
go for it.
myself, because in the lead up to us playing the show, I had made just a quick flyer before we had an official one, and I had put all of our information on there, and it had my pronouns on it. And when I posted that on the Dune Reddit, and yeah, I know it's Reddit, but I couldn't believe the pushback I got from people just because of that. Like, as if that would be some weird thing in the Dune universe.
Yeah.
Of all universes.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I really hope that and I'm very thankful to Modifius for putting that representation into the work. I really am.
Well, it's the thing I've tried to. I mean, it's just what I would like to imagine of humanity in 10,000 years. That when things come up of who people are loving or how they're presenting themselves or what their identity is, that there is such a diverse universe out there that people just go, so that's you, and it's not a big deal.
Right.
Why it doesn't?
Exactly. You got chum shares to worry about.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
my sort of rereading or my sort of revision of the novel is going. The reason it's not really mentioned in the novels is because it's not really an issue for anyone.
Yeah.
Nobody is taking issue with anything. So, be who you want to be, because, as I say, it really doesn't matter who's wielding the knife that's stabbing you in the back. It's the knife you've got on.
Right.
So,
And to what Jace said,
yeah.
I think it always blows my mind too. Like in any type of futuristic type setting, in which is always whether film or a game universe, right? Any type of sci-fi future thing, whatever. When people like that, like the people on Reddit will freak out or get trivial over something like that, and it's like, man, this is a future setting. If you just look, I mean, I know we have a long way to go, obviously, with where we are in the world today, but if you compare that to where we were even just 10 years ago or 20, now imagine tens of thousands of years. I mean, my God, like Andrew said, it's not even a thing. Like it shouldn't even matter.
Yeah.
Like that sort of thing doesn't even come into play. There's so many more things, like you said, chum shares and things to worry about.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but it does blow my mind when people online trip over stuff like that when it comes to like a future game, and it's like, where do you think we're gonna reverse
25
development?
25,000 years in the future. I would think we would be past this.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
Honestly,
but it is Reddit. It is online, so let's remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Jace was telling me about when that happened, I actually got a little concerned, just because I mean, with their pronouns, Jace was kind of the most kind of at the forefront of, oh, this is something that people might react poorly to, but like, oh God, like I'm a trans woman playing a trans character. Oh God, help me.
Yeah.
But I will say,
I think
if
the people,
I was just gonna say, I will say, if the mods of that particular Reddit happen to watch this, thank you very much for your support and for dealing with the people that had issues.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, this also circles back to what we were discussing about how important, safety mechanics are. And in particular, like looking at now that media has changed, where actual play streaming services and stuff are just becoming more commonplace and everything. we at Weave the Tale have been very blessed with having such a really awesome, welcoming community. I imagine, Rob, your community is very similar. And I've really been impressed with, overall at least, how far the gaming community has come, and just being a more inclusive space. Like, I mean, I remember 5 years ago being at a Gen Con and just sitting in on like a Dungeons and Dragons game for fun. And like, I had a set of sparkly pink dice, and the GM, like, I'm the only girl at the table, and the GM looks at me and is like, "Oh, of course the girl has sparkly pink dice." And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And so, then
I have
the
sparkly
game
pink
happens,
dice.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like-
So then, like, the game happens, and it's literally, I'm playing like a rogue assassin or something because I have a brand, and we get into this guy's
Yep.
final boss, and I'm like, I do my thing, and I'm just like, "Oh, hey, I just dealt like 62 damage in a single hit to your guy. Did I kill him with my sparkly pink dice? Oh, gosh. Were you hoping this would be an extended combat? I'm so sorry." But it's just like, and it's like, and what I appreciate is that is not a common story anymore. Like that is something that is thankfully has moved on to like not be a thing, and my hope is that these stories that you are telling right now of like, like that awfulness, I'm hoping that in 5 years from now, that will be, just something of like, "Oh yeah, this is how it used to be." But now everything is like, way more inclusive than where we were.
I mean, I'd like to think, I mean, this is to
Yeah.
be round. I would just like to think that the reason some of these people are so vociferous is because they can see it's kind of on the way out, and that, they are losing.
Exactly.
I mean, it was quite interesting. I was, because I work in the theatre, is my real job. And one of our old stage doorkeepers, I think he passed a couple of years ago now, but he was old enough to have been on one of the first London Pride marches. And he described in his lifetime, not that long ago, where even the police were sort of like picking up people, and it was a protest march. People were, throwing things at people, and now in an immensely short time, now Pride is this thing that everyone gets involved. If anything, the problem is too much corporate interest in it. And things suddenly, Starbucks is doing multicolored mugs, and you think, where were you last year? But it's to have moved to that level in such a short time, that's one of the things that gives me a certain amount of hope for the future. But
they paint the streets here during Pride. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes,
We've
same.
still got,
it's so good.
I love that there's a thing they did these. I don't know the official name for the symbol, but there's a sort of unisex gender symbol that had, I think, the cross and the arrow on it and something else. I don't know the name for it. But it got, for some reason, in Trafalgar Square, the crossing lights, they replaced what usually is like a man or woman for the green and the red. They replaced them with these symbols, and people like them, so they just never took them away. And they've been there for years now. You just, for some reason, in Trafalgar Square, a couple of the crossings show you these non-binary symbols for things, which is great.
That's fine. That's nice.
That's incredible. But circling back though, something Rob that you had mentioned really fast, because we are on a Dune roundtable, and that was a really great, really incredible way to just discuss everything. But Rob had mentioned before that something that's really cool about this book is that because of the narrative focus, it's really great for streaming. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about that because, again, especially with the lockdown, with the pandemic, I think we noticed, like, just a overall increase in how many actual plays were happening on Twitch, as so many more people were just on top of streaming their tabletop games, also just switching to doing Zoom and Discord tabletop RPGs. So I think it's kind of cool to sort of like talk about how the new media has changed and evolved the hobby. And also, I'm kind of curious, Andy, about your perspective as a game designer. Like, is that something that you guys take into account when you're creating these books? Like, whether or not there are tools for people who are doing like long distance or streaming stuff and all of that.
No, very much so. I think a lot of gaming companies are realizing very quickly that streaming is a huge thing, and that we had that. The Diana Jones Award was, awarding it as like a thing just because the way it's exploded recently. And I think a lot of games will get left behind if they're not also available to stream, because it's from a gaming company point of view, it's not just that we want people to play the games more, but streaming advertises our games, because people then put those streams out on the internet for people to watch, and in a way that you don't do with your normal home game. So we're getting all these sort of free adverts, and if people aren't playing a game because it doesn't work that way, we're losing out on a certain amount of revenue and internet space that we could have. It was one of the conversations we had about the zoning system in when I was talking to Nathan originally about the system when we have our combat and conflict. One of my concerns was, how easy and simple is this for people who are streaming to do? Because that's one of the things that's difficult, is to draw the zones out.
Yes.
And to take away some of the things where you haven't got that central table, which is what makes things a little more difficult when you're thinking of the game. There isn't that central area everyone can see quite so often. But we were very pleased that Roll20 approached us to do a conversion. They did some amazing stuff with that, and it's great to see that out there. But we have I wish we could keep up with them, but there are so many. We actually, I think, have a dedicated person who's there in the company to look at dealing with streaming platforms and Roll20 and all the other various different versions that you can do, because Bodivius has certainly recognised that this is something that they need to focus on. I mean, I wouldn't want to change a game so it could only be run on stream, although I don't think that would really make too much difference. But I think it is definitely one of those things you've got to recognise that people are streaming and they need the tools to do that. Yeah.
Well, when I mentioned it,
yeah.
No, I was going to say when I mentioned it, what I was ultimately referring to was the fact that all the gameplay I do is pretty much streams.
Yeah.
I run multiple teams on different channels. And it's very, very role play heavy. Even when we hit crunchy moments, we're describing things, and it's very like all my players very much into cosplay. I use lots of overlays and I do voices and accents, and I really get in. I use props, and like we're into it. And Dune leans into that shit way more than a lot of other systems in that it's very role play heavy. And I think for streaming, it's great because it's entertaining. Not just to play and be in it as a player, as a GM, but people watching or even listening to my podcast, they don't even have the visual, but just the descriptions and stuff, but especially visuals with the way we get into it, obviously. But Dune is just, it motivates that aspect of gameplay, which is just more entertaining, I think, to watch, like when I tune into streams that are playing Dune, Fallout, a lot of these 2D20 systems and ones that lean into that, it's more entertaining than like a more crunchy system where it's like, I didn't tune in to like figure out, watch math being thrown down every 2 seconds, and Dune especially is very role play heavy, so it's really entertaining.
Oh yeah, I mean, just on the subject of costuming, I went as all out as I could in the time allotted anyway with our game. But like, if we get a season 2, I'm looking at like learning to sew. I bought a pattern for a coat to make myself look as much as like like an ARRAKIS noble as
Nice.
possible, and so I'm in. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, like what you were saying too. Like it definitely, I think what was really cool was just, again, between, you know, the narrative focus, like, and the momentum system being that very fast-paced sort of give and take. It was very like I feel like, um, you know, when you're streaming on Twitch, it is important to have heavier role play games, just because, you know, apart from people wanting to have something cool to listen to while they're at work or doing whatever they're doing, you know, it's not as much fun watching people like squint at spreadsheets and then, like, you know, do math on the screen, like, you know. And no knocking to anybody who, you know, does enjoy watching that stuff, but like, I'm more saying, like, objectively, as far as visuals go, like, it's a bit of a higher investment, because, you know, you have to have that base knowledge of understanding of what the spreadsheets are all doing and like what all of the numbers that everything's adding together mean. What I like, though, is that, you know, again, I can create this scene with my players, and, you know, they don't even necessarily have to roll any dice or anything. And the thing can just be resolved entirely with role play, which is always really, really fun for me as a GM, because, you know, again, I like that I don't necessarily have to break up those character driven moments with dice. I can just be like, yeah, no, you know, we're gonna have this happen, like, you know,
It's the
that's really
ultimate
cool.
fun. Like you're a little
Yeah.
kid playing pretend. You know, it's like
Yeah.
like I'm a filmmaker by trade too. You know, I run a marketing company. I do filmmaking and stuff. But that's like part
Comic
of the fun
artist.
of that is I'm into that too. I have a published comic out a
Nice.
few years ago, a couple ones. We should chat you know, off camera about stuff like that too. But I
Yeah,
love
sure.
the aspect of all that is that sort of you know, that childish fun of like playing pretend. And I think that those role play heavy moments, like when you're playing with a friend or a fellow player and they just bring up a
Yes.
situation to you, like, oh, remember that one time when we entered that one store and that merchant said this to us and you had to do this, and you're like, oh yeah, and then this happened, and you start playing off of each other and you build this whole memory and scene that plays into the current scene. Like, those are just the best moments when you're playing pretend, you know, and it's no dice involved. You're just creating these cinematic moments and this lore. You're creating your own lore in this world. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And I
that's
love
basically why I write.
And I love with what Nathan's done with this system is that you can add narrative elements on the top of pretty much anything. So I always insist players, when they spend momentum, I'm saying, say, what is it? You know, well, this momentum, I've got another blade in my pocket, or because I noticed, you know, this momentum is because I noticed the bead of sweat going down his face, so I know I've got him on the ropes. That's what's giving me the extra dice.
Oh yeah.
I like that detail a lot. That's really clever.
And I've bits and pieces coming out, and again, and the GM when spending threat, and even if you're bouncing, you know, we've had a few where I've spent threat and it's almost been to, you know, negate sometimes momentum. This momentum is doing this. Well, the threat is because, you know, it's, you know, he knows he's doing, and that's what's drawing you in. But I've also seen as we gradually build these pools up, I like doing a little bidding wall thing with the narrative.
Well, yeah, and like that,
That's
ultimately what you just described there too is also so quintessentially Dune. Just the, you know, but like we expressed with those mechanics of, like, you know, because again, in the books you have like the dinner sequence where, you know, like, this person is saying this thing, but what they're really saying is this other thing, and then the other person being like, well, they are saying this thing in this way, but if I respond in this way, we're talking about something completely different, then they will get the signal that this is what this means, and I will be the one who has won the day, when everybody else watching is just like, why are they talking about, you know, fish? Like, okay, salt cod prices have gone up 30%, whatever. Like, and so yeah, so that idea of like I really like that idea of utilizing you know, the momentum to counter threat to counter momentum, and because again it just builds in that like political hyper awareness, you know, sort of give and take. It's so cool.
Yeah,
True, but I really also I was just going to say that I really loved the fact that throughout what we played 8 games for the series.
Yes.
Throughout those 8 games, I think I had to roll less than a dozen total times because everything was so in the moment between characters.
Yeah.
And the rules were there if needed, if something was actually needed. And that's all that they needed to be. It was perfect.
Yeah. For the most part, like I tried to keep the rules light, because when you were doing things in role play that, you know, just flowed perfectly and like made, you know, sense from like here to here, it didn't make sense to like give you a you know, non-challenging test, like at least to me. I thought that because I didn't want, you know, again, it's all about like being mindful of the role play and not wanting to break up these cool moments and cool scenes with just, you know, like, all right, like let's add this unnecessary test. But like I think but you know, when you guys had I would give challenges when it was either something that was super, you know, like this is obviously has to be a challenge of some kind because, you know, there is no way this person would do this thing with the approach you are taking here, or if it was a case of just, you know, yeah, like giving that tension, or more likely giving you a path forward if you guys as players weren't quite sure where to go from where you were. So, you know, like again, having roles as necessary to aid story progression versus just the you have to roll for every little thing. Like that's really cool.
Well, that's the rule that I always go on about. That's my favourite of. I mean, this is a general 2D21. Is the difficulty 0 roll, which I go on about a lot, because because I found there's so many times in a game where you'll go. The usual example is players go into a party, and the first thing they do is say, "Oh, I'm going to have a good. I'll turn around the room and see if there's any interesting rumours or any interesting people or." And as the GM, you're going, well, I was going to introduce this party gradually, and I had a whole host of NPCs you were going to meet quietly one by one and learn. Yeah. But now you've just said, I want you to deliver all of, you know, there's 100 people here. I want to know all of them and all their secrets and all. I was thinking, oh God, I can't, you know, and if I make up rumors, you're then going to go off on a tangent, or you're going to ignore them because you'll know they're just rumors I made up because you heard them. And what do I do? And in this one, you just go, okay, do a difficulty 0 roll, or even a slightly higher difficulty if like you're outsiders or everyone in the room hates you or something. And you go, however much momentum you get is the bonus of you having gone round the room. So when you spend that momentum, oh, you know, I'm going to have a conflict with him because I heard that he was, you know, he was having an affair with somebody's wife, because that's what I learned when I was doing my turn around the room. Or I saw those two guys. So I know they're allies. That's what I'm spending my points for. And all of that pool of momentum suddenly has a narrative reason to it. That's what you learned. And it's all to that. And again, this comes back to the system being the foundation underneath. It gives you those points, and those points become narrative things when you choose to bring them into the game, which is, you know, it's fabulous. I mean, I only really had encountered 2D20 in Star Trek, and I'd only played it. It was one of the few games I'd played rather than run a lot. So I was a little bit of a 2D20 newbie when I came into doing Dune, and once I got into the system and started really, because obviously I had to start really playing it, I was like, oh, there's some really nice twists to this, and you know, there's a couple of things, because I write a sort of occasional. I write for Ian World, doing little articles and blog posts for them. And one of the ones I do all the time is this thing called I've called it Game Design Masterclass because it followed I wrote an article on why Pendragon is the best system ever made by man, which is I will fight people on. Dune's a very good system. And so this turned into a series of me writing, here's a game and why here's a cool bit of system, which is a bit weird for me because I'm about the narrative rather than the numbers. But there, every now and again, you come across role-playing games, you go, "Oh, that was a nice bit of system. That was a really clever rule." The most insidious one I found, I think the most evil and clever piece of game design I've seen for a while, is the experience system in Alien. If you've seen Free League Zone, because it has this all the usual bits and pieces. You know, if you were gain an experience point if you got involved with the scenario, gain an experience point if you learned something, and then it's got at the bottom, gain an experience point if you made money during the adventure. I thought, oh yes, so you've just said to all of your players, if you can make money in these things, you get an experience point, which makes sense of all of those guys that when the aliens are pounding on the door, they're still going, look guys, if we just get the cash out of the safe, or all that really dumb stuff that you're going, why are you doing this? You're all going to die. It's only money, just run, it's not worth your lives. That explained all those bits where people are going, yeah, but it's worth experience points. And you can't tempt players with money, but you can tempt them with experience. And they will do all the stupid things people will do for money in the game if you give them experience points for it. And I just looked at that rule, one sentence in that game, and I went, Free League, you are gold. You are brilliant. I mean, it's just one of many brilliant things about Free League. But yeah, you always look for those little moments in games where you go, that is phenomenal.
Yeah, I'd love to reiterate something that you mentioned a moment ago. Because I do something similar, and I love the wording that you used as well. But using the momentum the same way, like I'll do 0 point checks with AP and Fallout, but using momentum in zero. I think there's a couple things here. Is on a 0 difficulty. I love the banking of a narrative, banking some role play, like the situation, especially if it's in something like in Dune where it's very roleplay heavy, narrative heavy, and then later it's, you've got that extra momentum point because you learned this. I love pulling that in. I also love 0 difficulty checks for just a chance of a complication, because that again adds narrative. I think, like, you know, it's the negative moments to me, I don't like using the word negative. There's not a better word to describe these moments, but negative not by definition. Well, but even then, like, not by definition. I like these for what they are, but not by true definition. Because when it comes to role play, when it comes to narrative, when it comes to an entertaining stream, it's those moments that are the best. They're the absolute best. Even if it breaks the fourth wall, even if you're dipping into chat, or you even break character, it gets a little meta sometimes. Even that can be entertaining as hell, especially to a stream, because everyone laughs about it, or all the characters. Holy shit! Okay, how are we dealing with this? Okay, this. Okay. Then you get back into character. Then you get back into your voice, and you're like, okay, here's how I'm dealing with it. You know, and all of a sudden the accent comes back. You're back in the game, and like, but it's those moments that are just, to me, the best.
And this is the thing I've noticed with role playing, particularly because 7th season of a game I play a lot. And I've noticed weirdly that, you have stories about where your character did something really cool and really well. But I've noticed that all my best role-playing stories are when someone failed spectacularly, or failed when they didn't expect it. Or this was a given and it still, got ruined. I thought, it's the failure that actually makes the great stories, and is the funnest part of role-playing sometimes.
Oh, and if you're a good GM, it'll be it won't be the be all end all. It'll be a bigger picture repercussion reward system. You know, maybe that campaign. You know, I've had plenty campaigns end where, like, a floating citadel was sinking, and hundreds of people are dying, and they couldn't save everybody. Or, like, over here they sold the evidence to the newspaper to get the big payoff, and they didn't do what they were supposed to do with the evidence or something. Just to lightly Cliff's Notes these things. But then, like, later on, campaign 3 or 4, all of a sudden they needed this and they couldn't get it because of what they did back then. And, like, I think there's this bigger sort of give and take that sometimes these moments can play into, to where at the moment it's this negative and it's this fun thing, but if you're a good GM, man, it can play into this bigger epic that I think, you know, real fans of what you're doing will appreciate, you know, if they're into it.
Definitely. Yeah, one of my favorite quotes from Game of Thrones is when Littlefinger says that chaos isn't a pit, it's a ladder. And I think about that often, of just, you know, again, from that thing of, because like, you know, to wrap this up, because we are approaching time. Basically, you know, what I really love about role-playing games is that there is no necessarily like winning a role-playing game, because, you know, unless it's a one-shot, it's always going to continue, and it is a story, and like, you know, there isn't necessarily a winning of a story. There is a beginning, a middle, and an end. And where you gain that satisfaction is in telling like the best and most impactful story you can. And, you know, having those moments where, you know, your character is tested, where your character stumbles, where they fall, those really create those moments where you as a role player have to like look at that ladder and figure out, you know, how to get out of this pit you're in. And that challenge, that, you know, like rising and overcoming, like that's why we play these games, because, you know, it's awesome. But yeah, to close
It's
up,
therapy.
I would like to, to close, I would like to talk about, you know, have everybody talk about what they're most excited about with Dune coming in the future. And then again, don't forget to give your plugs on what projects and stuff you're working on right now. But yeah, you know, between the new movies, the new TV series, the new Modifius books, there's so much Dune content coming out. So, you know, now is your chance to have a brief fan moment to goob about it. Let's start with Jace.
I'm looking forward to all of it. I can't wait for the next movie. Cannot wait for the TV show, the Bene Gesserit focused TV show HBO Max is making, and then give me all the supplements for the RPG. Seriously, I'm super excited about the ARRAKIS book. I want I want one for every house. I know that's a lot, but anyway, my name is Jace Ridley. You can find me at Jace Ridley everywhere. I stream, I write, I do all kinds of things. And yeah, hopefully I'll be back for what could be season episodes. Well, no, season 2, but at least hopefully next season on Weave the Tale.
Awesome. Miss Sally?
Well, as y'all know, I'm Allie. I played Cassandra Lucinor in our Dune campaign, and I still hope we get to do more of it, because that was a blast, a lot of fun, and I want all the books. I want all the books. In fact, I think to celebrate where we left off, I might just go order myself the Atreides edition of the core book.
It looks
But
so pretty.
Yeah, I keep looking at that too.
It does.
Yes, we did
Just,
see
I couldn't decide.
interview. Yeah, there's an interview I think with Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya, I think, and I think they must have just wanted some stuff in the background. But we noticed Modifius we just lost it. We noticed there's an Atreides book sitting behind them. It goes, it's a book behind them.
I saw that.
That's
I saw
great.
that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so we were over the moon seeing that, you know. So.
Allie, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at Lexi Phoenix on Twitter. That's basically where I'm at and most readily available most of the time. So
Yeah. Any new projects coming up that we should be aware of? Where can we find, you know, like, what are you up to?
Oh, well, I am a writer. I do game design and fiction, and the anthology with my upcoming short story, Silence in the Dark, is now fully funded on Kickstarter, so that should be rolling out
Nice.
sometime in the next year. I'm very excited. And if you want to find some of my other work, I did a short story in an anthology called Apex World of Dinosaurs that I kind of describe my story as was it Alien meets Jurassic Park? Um and then I've also done a bunch of writing for Shadowrun as well, and some for Vampire the Masquerade. So you can find my work there.
Awesome.
So pitch
Rob.
me. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So
As far as
So-
what was that?
Oh, I was just saying, if you're a writer, pitch me if you want to do stuff for Dune. So,
Oh,
we
really?
always
Absolutely,
need
yeah.
adventure, and so
Okay then.
yes, if Rachel hasn't
Keep that
written
in
them
mind.
all,
Thanks.
then, to,
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm as far as Dune stuff, I'll check D all of the above. Like I think all of us are saying, I'm into the films. The second film coming hopefully sooner than later. Beyond that, the series, the definitely more supplements coming from Odysseus. I would love some books, like Jay said, maybe about the different houses. I'd love to see stuff more about past and current potential tech and things that have been worked on, different things about planets and lore and people, maybe even coming up with more random table generator style things for potential populaces and things, just stuff to use as a GM. Just give me it all. I want all of it, any of it, all of it, whatever. I'll take it. I need it. So that's what I'm into there. As far as where you can find me, I'm Game Master Rob Mulligan. I'm the founder of Cybernation Uncensored. You can check us out on Twitch and on YouTube. Lots of live streaming, lots of gameplay, all kinds of stuff. So just check out Cybernation Uncensored. Also, we have the Kickstarter launching in a couple days. I think we can get the link in chat. I think I sent it earlier. But yeah, if everybody can check out that, I would really appreciate it. Sign up. We have magnetic miniatures with interchangeable parts and stuff. These dice sets that are perfect for Cyberpunk Red with 2D20 add-ons.
Cool.
A portable dice tower and case. And this first round of products is very Cyberpunk Red focused, but it can fit into any sort of sci-fi dystopian sort of game, including Fallout and other ones as well. But it's a lot of fun. You should check out the shit we got going on. Hopefully the link gets there. That's it for me.
Awesome. Andy.
yeah. Well, I've obviously got a pile of Dune stuff on the way that that the team is working on. My other stuff is I had a little while ago now, but I did a theatre role-playing game called Opera House, which I put my real job and my other job together, and you take part people in this crazy Gormenghast-like theatre. And I've also got, I don't know when it's coming out, but I think they have announced I've got a Regency source book for Call of Cthulhu on the way from Chaosium.
That's
Freelance
awesome.
as well for everyone all over the place.
Nice.
And a few more Doctor Who stuff for Cubicle 7, which I'm a huge fan of. I'm so glad they've got that back and running. And there's more stuff on the way that I'm not allowed to talk about. But yeah, so for Dune, there is, I think you're going to like what we have on the way. We just released, I think, the Atreides and Harkonnen dice, which are just so cool.
I saw that. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I need some of those.
Yeah, so one of our next things, Agents of Dune, that we have announced, our sort of campaign starter set. It's going to be, we've tried to pack everything. There's going to be a lot of things. You obviously get similar things to what you'll expect in a starter set, but we've tried to put a little bit more in there, and a lot of stuff that's going to be really helpful for playing the game later on. So it's not just starting your adventures, it's the stuff you need to start your campaign. And we have at least, obviously, Sand and Dust is at print at the moment and pre-order. You can get hold of the PDF. We're really pleased with how that's come out. That one also contains, we've got some things like when we come back to Spice, we've added Spice talents into that. So special things you can do if you've got some Spice. And we've also, that's what I'm going to try to do is some of these faction characters, like the Guild Agents and Fremen, I'm going to try and give them a bit of an expansion in appropriate books. So obviously, Sand and Dust really expands on what Fremen player characters can do, and also gives you a few more campaigns outside the usual "you are agents of a house" campaign. That's our ideal campaign, is agents of a house. But we will be having new ideas for ways you can take the game in different places beyond that as well, in some of the other supplements. And then we've got, I'd say, I can't tell you what they are, but we have one more book that Rachel's done some awesome stuff with, part of the team, that follows on from Agents of Dune, and we have another book that we've just got, the writers have just brought some stuff back from, so that's going into editing, so on their way, and another book that is in outlining at the moment. We actually have a set of books we have mostly cleared with the estate for that we will be producing, and then hopefully, things going well, we'll be then adding more to that list. We would like to have more on the bed earlier, but we've held that back because the Sisterhood coming out, we don't want to do a whole book and then discover the Sisterhood changes everything, or it becomes a problem. So it's a bit of a problem because, of course, the Ben Gesserit are one of the ones that we all absolutely love, but there'll be more on loads of other pieces and loads of accessories. We have more than dice on the way. We've got some other really interesting stuff that, again, I really want to talk about, because I live in this world at the moment, and I really want to talk about all of these things, and they're not being announced, and I don't want to get fired.
No, but we'll all sit here and listen.
Yeah, we don't want you to get fired either. We have
No, we don't.
appreciated like again, thank you so very much for taking the time to come on our show and goob about Dune, because again, this has been so beloved for all of us, and it's just been such an incredible experience.
No, it's anyone who knows. Say, what you wanted Andy to go and talk about role playing for a bit? Yeah, that must have been a difficult for him. Please, I think it's kind of my sales technique at conventions. I think that people buy games from me just to shut me up. It's like, yeah, it's a great game. Give me some money. Way, I've got other things to look at. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah, but yeah, hi, I'm SavageSparrow, and I was GM for this season of Dune. I will be playing other games on Weave next season. I don't remember what quite yet, but it will be posted at some point. Otherwise, I play Pathfinder every Sunday on our sister channel, Penny for a Tale, with our lovely Ian as GM. And my website, SavageSparrow.com, is where you can find all of my super awesome apparel, accessories, and various art things. I will be at PAX Unplugged, wandering about. For once, it is a convention I am not working, so I would love to meet anybody from the Weaver audience. That would be great. But yeah, again, I want to thank all of our fantastic guests for taking the time tonight to just talk about everything Dune. I want to thank Modifius for sponsoring our show. We had such a wonderful time. Again, this book is incredible. It is so beautiful. It is so easy to get into and just pick up and play. And there has been so much work and so much love put into this book. Please support it. It is amazing. As far as stuff I am looking forward to, I really like the Talaxi, and I want to see more weird stuff explored with them being the creepy science weirdos that they are.
Well,
That's a good way of describing it.
No spoilers. They're my favourites too. So if I can get them in.
I am so excited. Thank you so much. This has been the best. But yeah, again, thank you guys so much. Hopefully we'll have more Dune content next season. At the very least, I was thinking of running what is quite possibly the worst idea for a Dune one-shot, which is Dune as told as a 1980s high school rom comedy, a la Breakfast Club.
I call Alex CD right now. Right now.
Yeah, it works so well having like the Harkonnen just be like the big meathead jocks, all like, ugh, you know, you think you rule the school. But yes. So, provided somebody can get drunk enough to approve this one-shot idea, that is another thing you can look forward to from me. Otherwise, thank you again, everybody. Thank you for watching. Keep an eye out on the Weave channel in our Discord for the schedule next season. And yeah, with that, I think we bid adieu. So, bye, everybody.
ARRAKIS. Dune. A planet that is both a volatile desert wasteland and the most precious jewel in the universe. For it is only on ARRAKIS where the spice melange can be found. The spice has shaped humanity for a millennia, and it is the foundation that makes interstellar travel possible. Fortunes rise and fall as quickly as the sands shift on ARRAKIS. It is a place where a smile and a quiet word can cut as easily as a crysknife. And nothing is what it seems. Welcome to Dune.